program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella, starting with the weather report. Rain today. There can be freezing drizzle and slippery spots mainly north of the city, high of 37. A little rain in the evening, ending before temperatures fall below freezing tonight, low of 29. Mostly cloudy tomorrow, a high of 36 and a low of 30. For Friday, rain and drizzle, breezy, high of 45, low of 31. Saturday, becoming cloudy, a high of 36, low of 27. Sunday, snow or flurries possible, high of 29, low of 24. Monday, snow or flurries possible, high of 29, low of 13. And for Tuesday, bitterly cold, a high of 18 and a low of 11. Sunrise was at 7:09 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 5:51 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story, City School is unprepared for remote learning days. Whether you ask Buffalo school students, parents, or teachers, it's tough to find anyone who likes remote learning days. When you're at home, it's harder to focus due to too many distractions like your phone, family, and like your bed being comfortable, says Hazrat Gray, a junior at Hutchinson Central Technical High School and a student community health worker. I don't think the teachers want to do it. Most students don't want to do it, and we don't want to do it as parents, said Ed Spital, who leads the District Parent Coordinating Council. We told the superintendent the other day, just have a snow day. We can figure it out. If it's a state of emergency, those snow days don't count anyway. Nobody likes remote instruction, said Rich Nigro, Buffalo Teachers Federation president. We didn't like it during COVID. It can't take the place of authentic instruction face-to-face, but it's an option. If you're presented with two bad choices, it's the better of the two bad choices. With a crunched calendar and regular bouts with severe weather, remote learning days appear to be unavoidable in order to meet the state's requirement of 180 instructional days, and one still universally preferred to trimming from winter vacations. Buffalo Schools spokesperson Jeffrey Hammond emphasized safety considerations often dictate remote instruction. Although it is well known students learn best when at school, a remote day allows districts to keep students safe while allowing them to stay connected to learning during harsh weather conditions, Hammond said. The district's website includes links relevant to learning remotely. It's also apparent, at least from interviews conducted by the Buffalo News, that Buffalo Schools is not yet in a position to do remote learning well. We're not ready to do it, and it's not that a shot at anybody. It's a fact, Spital said. We did it in 2020 because we were forced to do it, and nobody's ever given us the funding to develop real virtual programs. Why remote days happened. Remote learning in Buffalo schools was inescapable once frigid wintry weather collided with state tests and reshaped district calendars. Buffalo schools endured perhaps the choppiest 2.5 weeks of scheduling once returning to full in-person learning following the pandemic. The second half of January featured the Martin Luther King Jr. Day holiday, 3 snow days, 3 days of high school Regents exams, and either 2 or 3 remote learning days for elementary and high school students, respectively. Disruptions were felt most acutely by high school students who had just 2 days of regular in-person learning from January 15th snow day until the first day of February. The calendar chaos put Buffalo schools in a difficult position once it exhausted its 3 allotted snow days on January 15th, 20, and 26. The third closure, since it came under Kathy Hochul's state of emergency declaration on January 23rd, does not technically count as a snow day, but it requires a waiver in future months. In past years, Buffalo built in more flexibility for snow days, Nigro said, but recent changes have made it more challenging to squeeze in 180 days of instruction. There's a lot more holidays now, Nigro said, and that erodes away at days that would otherwise have been snow days. It's not just severe weather forcing remote learning. Buffalo schools, aging buildings, and cities' vulnerable infrastructure have forced several schools, Lorraine and Riverside Academies, as well as West Hurdle Elementary, to learn remotely at various times this year. The problem with devices. The timing of district decisions for remote learning and the ensuing in-school scrambles to prepare invited scrutiny, but there's no greater barrier to remote learning than device access. On its website, Buffalo Schools says each student is supplied with a school-issued device to be used for learning in and out of school. Parents can purchase insurance to protect the devices, and for some technology, the first repair is free. Several people interviewed stressed the policy in practice is much different. This year, there have been more than a couple, probably 3 or 4 conflicting directives coming from the IT department to the buildings, ranging from every student's going to have a laptop to take home to the laptops are going to stay in the building, said Nigro, the union president. At Leonardo da Vinci High School, sophomore Abdullah Alanif says students' devices remain in school unless families sign a liability waiver. For remote learning recently, he was grateful for that permission. Luckily, I had a laptop with me because if you sign a paper, you can get a device with you to take home, explained Elanif, also a community health worker. But not all students were in possession of tools and devices to participate in platforms such as Sociology, Teams, or just access the assignments posted by teachers. Marisol Antonetti of the District Parent Coordinating Council said there was no device transport for her 2 teenagers at International Prep. Under no circumstances are they allowed to let them bring them out of the building, she said. Antonetti said her freshman tried to access a district platform on his phone, but the link did not work and other functions he needed weren't available. Microsoft Word, if they have to type up a paper or something, their cell phones are not compatible with that, she said. The helplessness took a toll, she said. She gets really angry if he misses things he needs to get done, or if they're not done in a timely manner, Antonetti said. The school board has been critical of the district requiring parents to take some financial responsibility. Even so, replacing devices is not cheap. The board approved $1 million in June to replace outdated iPads, then $1.65 million in August to replace 2,800 laptops that were lost or stolen or broken. Factoring in devices for teachers and students entering the district, plus software security at vendors, annual sums can exceed $10 million. Most families have some technological recourse, or at least work to be done at home, the district said. Antonetti, a parent engagement liaison at School 18, did not understand why her high school children didn't have the same experience as the elementary students with whom she works. School 18 sent home work packages, largely mitigating device issues. I know for sure there's a lot of families who do not have devices. What can be done? Student community health workers agreed on one step forward: alert students in the fall of a general plan for remote learning. What they should be prepared and told us was what we're going to do, said Gay, the Hutch Tech student. Yes, you can't really expect it. It's kind of a surprise. But you could also plan it out, tell us before what assignment we would do. A strategy for devices would also be meaningful, Alinif said. Equipped with a high school laptop, he said opening sociology and checking each class for assignments was straightforward. Locking into Microsoft Teams for attendance and instructions was not too bad either. Timing is vital too for students and teachers to pull off a remote day. Even for students who have permission to bring devices home, many will have to leave them at school to charge the battery. If the district can provide enough notice of a remote day, more students will likely remember their devices, and teachers, especially in grades that change classes, have more time to communicate expectations to students. If I have 7th grade English at School 30 and I get a message from my administrator at 2 o'clock to get work together, I've already seen 4 of my 5 classes for the night. Right, said Nigro. The outcome will always be imperfect, interviewees said. The break in routine and lack of resources at home will continually be a problem for students with disabilities on remote days. Families without internet access do not have an obvious solution. Overarching district guidance applicable applicable to all schools would reduce some of the stress when remote learning is declared, he continued. If you have a process that's already defined in place from the top down, then it takes all the guesswork out, Nigro said.
Thank you, Larry. Vandalism halts work on stadium at a critical time. The Buffalo Bills' new stadium project is experiencing an unexpected delay at a critical time in its construction, and that may be due to one or more workers on the project vandalizing the site. The project site has been shut down temporarily due to graffiti being discovered at the stadium in several secured areas. Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz said Tuesday the graffiti is pornographic and anti-LGBTQ in nature. Officials believe it was someone working on the site who created the graffiti because to get to the locations, the person would have needed a pass and security clearance, Poloncarz said. Erie County Sheriff John Garcia said in a statement that the Sheriff's Office Investigative Services Division is investigating the graffiti but would not comment further. Authorities will be reviewing on-site security cameras as part of the investigation, Poloncarz said. The person or parties responsible will be charged with a crime because of the substantial financial damage it has caused, he added. What's going on there is not funny, and it is costing more money to do work at the stadium because they have to redo a lot of the work that had previously been done, Poloncarz said. General contractor Gilbane Turner said Monday the work is being suspended to investigate incidents of graffiti and other vandalism that occurred despite the site being highly secure, both in and around it. We suspended work and launched a full investigation in partnership with the trade contractors and unions to send a clear message about how seriously we take this matter, Gilbane Turner said in a statement. Gilbane Turner maintains zero tolerance for graffiti, vandalism, or defacement of property on our projects. Such actions damage property, violate the law, and undermine the respectful, professional environment we are committed to maintaining. Work has been going on nearly around the clock with 3 shifts, 7 days a week during most weeks as part of the push to complete the stadium in time to host its first events this summer. The graffiti was discovered over the weekend in several locations in both finished and unfinished areas of the stadium. But Poloncarz said the vandalism appears to have taken place over the past few weeks, and because of that, Gilbane Turner had to stop operations to focus on apprehending the individual or parties doing this to get it under control, he added. With only 5 months until substantial completion of the stadium is expected to occur, the project already had little wiggle room after weather and other delays put it behind in some areas as of last year, according to records released by the state. Since then, the team has been doing all it can to catch up to make sure the stadium could be far enough along by July. The county would then turn the keys over to the state, which will become the new stadium leaseholder. Having the stadium substantially completed by July will allow the Bills to hold an event or two prior to the NFL season getting underway. Further delays may not make that possible and could even push the Bills' first home event off until after the start of the preseason in August. Construction was also temporarily paused in 2024 after a report of a potential hate symbol discovered on site. This comes just a week after Pete Goelli, president of business operations for the Buffalo Bills and Sabres, said a ton of progress was being made on stadium construction, especially finishes inside the building. As of December 31st, the stadium project is 85% complete, according to a third-party forensic analysis. It really looks like a stadium now. We're in a great place, said Goelli, about 5 months before the over $2 billion stadium is slated to be substantially completed. An analysis of the stadium schedule from August showed certain areas behind schedule, enough to put the project behind by almost 12%. At that time, more than 100 critical items still needed addressing, but most were taken care of as of the new year, a county official previously said. The project had fallen weeks behind schedule because of last winter's harsh weather, a crane incident that took out an area of precast concrete, and another incident where a natural gas line was struck. Despite that, Goelli said last week that the stadium will get done on time no matter what it takes. Erie County Public Works Commissioner William Gary also said last week that progress to meet construction deadlines was moving along well. He remained optimistic that the stadium would be substantially completed on time and maybe even a month ahead of schedule. Additionally, Gilbane Turner also has said it will do whatever it takes to keep the project on schedule. If there's anything we need to pick up, we will throw the resources at it to make it happen, Gueli said before the graffiti incident. I have no concerns about that building opening on time. If there's anything that happens that needs to be addressed, we'll address it. The team actually has until March 2027 to finish the stadium, but it planned to only have punch list items to complete after July. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. Trump's crackdown has Dems tussling with abolish ICE. As President Trump's immigration surge in Minnesota winds down, it has revived a thorny debate among Democrats in Washington whether to eliminate the 23-year-old agency at the center of the crackdown. Among those leading the push to abolish ICE, short for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is progressive Representative Ilhan Omar, who said, "The moment demands it," after thousands of federal agents flooded the state for Operation Metro Surge and 2 Minnesotans were killed. Holding law-breaking ICE agents legally accountable is the bare minimum, Omar said during a news conference at Carmel Mall in Minneapolis in late January. We must abolish ICE. The debate comes as Congress is grappling with the fallout from the 6-week operation in Minnesota. Democrats have been united in opposing additional funding for the Department of Homeland Security until changes are made to the agency, including requiring ICE agents to unmask and wear identification. Some want to see DHS Secretary Kristi Noem impeached. The agency shut down last weekend after lawmakers went into recess without passing a funding bill. The idea of abolishing ICE, which has surfaced during Trump's first term, is again getting steam among progressives in response to the aggressive tactics used by the agents in Minneapolis. But Democrats are far from united on whether ICE should be abolished. Concerns about border security helped deliver Trump a second term, and some worry Republicans could try to tie all Democrats to the slogan much as they did with defund the police. Republicans have been able to weaponize these kinds of slogans before and make it seem like all Democrats think there should not be any immigration enforcement, said Lene Erickson, a senior vice president of the centrist think tank Third Way. If certain very loud Democrats overplay this moment and take it to a place that flips it politically, that could be tied to all Democratic candidates in 2026. Elaine Farhat, the co-executive director of Take Action Minnesota, a group that supports progressive candidates in the state, said calls to abolish ICE are going to be top of mind for any voter, and it's impossible for it not to be. Omar's deeply Democratic district includes Minneapolis, which was at the center of Trump immigration enforcement operation. She said her push to abolish the agency aligns with her constituents, and I feel comfortable in that call. The rest of Minnesota's Democratic delegation and Congress have stopped short of fully embracing calls to abolish ICE, even if most want major changes to the agency. We're always going to have some immigration enforcement in the country and border control, said Senator Amy Klobuchar, who is running for governor, said during a recent interview on NBC's Meet the Press when asked if ICE should be abolished. U.S. Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota said, "We need to rip ICE down to the studs and start over." GFL Rep. Betty McCollum thinks ICE should be radically reformed. Representative Kelly Morrison wants the agency to be completely overhauled from top to bottom. The immigration crackdown has become a central issue in Minnesota's most competitive races this fall, including the battle for the DFL nomination in the U.S. Senate and an open seat in Minnesota's competitive 2nd District. Current 2nd District Representative Angie Craig, who's running for U.S. Senate and previously said she disagrees with abolishing ICE, thinks this version of ICE is absolutely needing to go away in a recent interview. Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who's running against Craig for the U.S. Senate, has positioned herself as the most progressive Democratic candidate and has been criticizing Craig for past votes on the Laken-Riley Act, which allows law enforcement to detain undocumented immigrants arrested for nonviolent crimes. But Flanagan also stopped short of saying ICE should be abolished. We absolutely have to rip it apart, start over, and rebuild how immigration enforcement works in this country, Flanagan said in a statement. None of the 3 Democrats running for Craig's seat will say abolish ICE either. Trump's immigration surge in the state is deeply unpopular in Minnesota. About two-thirds of Minnesotans view ICE negatively and believe the tactics of federal agents have gone too far, similar to national views on Operation Metro Surge, according to a recent poll from NBC News Decision Desk / CARE 11 / Minnesota Star Tribune poll powered by SurveyMonkey. When it comes to changes to the agency, 43% of Minnesotans think ICE needs to be reformed, while 26% say it should be abolished and 31% said it should continue operating in its current form. Although Abolish ICE is showing signs that it could become a progressive litmus test for Democrats, the base may be giving them leeway in how they choose to describe where they stand. I have some candidates that are saying abolish, others are saying reform, said Hassan Martini, executive director of No Dem Left Behind, a group that supports progressive candidates, including Flanagan. Martini thinks there may be hesitation among Democrats who worry the slogan is reminiscent of defund the police, which divided the party in the aftermath of George Floyd's killing by a former Minneapolis police officer. However, Martini thinks the calls are completely different things. People love their local police in certain communities, while in others, they've been terrorized by them, Martini said. But in the situation of ICE, everyone has been terrorized. There's no protection there. McCollum recalls being frustrated getting pulled into the defund the police debate after Floyd's killing. I got tagged with abolishing the police during George Floyd. A lot of us did, and we had nothing to do with it, McCollum said. But when it comes to abolishing ICE, McCollum thinks Democrats have more flexibility in describing how they want to rein the agency in. That's fine if that's their choice of describing what they think needs to happen, McCollum said. I describe it differently in what I'd like to see happen. But even as they tread carefully on the broader issue, some are already talking about the abolish push is going too far. That abolish ICE stuff is very similar to defund the police, said Republican State Senator Eric Pratt, who is one of two Republicans running to replace Craig. It's not realistic.
Thank you, Larry. Today in history. In 1885, Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was published in the U.S. In 1970, the Chicago 7 defendants were found not guilty of conspiring to incite riots at the 1968 Democratic National Convention. 5 were convicted of violating the Anti-Riot Act of 1968. Those convictions were later reversed. In 1983, 13 people were shot to death at a gambling club in Seattle's Chinatown in what became known as the Wah May Massacre. 2 men were convicted of the killings and were sentenced to life in prison. A third was found guilty of robbery and assault and served 28 years in prison before being deported to Hong Kong in 2014. In 1994, in the final race of his Olympic career at the Winter Olympic Games in Lillehammer, Norway, U.S. speed skater Dan Jansen broke the world record in the 1,000 meters, winning the gold medal. In 2001, auto racing star Dale Earnhardt Jr. died in a crash in the final lap of the Daytona 500. He was 49. Also in 2001, veteran FBI agent Robert Philip Hansen was arrested, accused of spying for Russia. Hansen later pleaded guilty to espionage and attempted espionage and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He died in prison in 2023. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial, Intolerable Neglect. Maintenance issues at Erie County jails won't just go away, so make a plan. Don't make this all about needing a new jail. Like other long-standing problems at the Erie County Holding Center, undiscovered plumbing leaks, which only became evident when a foul stench filled the air, are due to neglect. Yes, the structure, built in 1937, is old and has heavy maintenance needs. It's all the more reason that official vigilance and timely upgrades are required. Until there is a new or improved jail, this is what we have. As difficult as it may be, problems must be addressed before they become catastrophes. As reported by the news' Sandra Tan, food debris, grease, and dirty water had been leaking out of kitchen pipes at the facility for months, building up to thousands of gallons of semi-solid and liquid waste in which both live and dead rats were found. The disgusting odor from all this was so bad that those working in the adjacent sheriff's office headquarters were allowed to work from home. Jail employees, inmates, and detainees were not so lucky. It had been going on for weeks, but according to Sheriff's Office spokesman Chris Horvatis, there was challenges and a problem with getting the appropriate equipment here. It wasn't until early last week that contractors were able to start suctioning out the waste. It took a while to identify the source of the leak, a broken pipe hanger below the kitchen. There is plenty of responsibility to go around here. Erie County Sheriff John Garcia outlined what it would cost to fix ongoing maintenance issues at both county jails, the holding center and the Alden Correctional Facility. After the most recent proposal of an expanded jail complex in Alden failed to gain favor in last November, Garcia spoke of $1 million in repairs to the climate control system, $7 million in plumbing repairs, $13 million in exterior work, $12 million in electrical work, and $8 million for a new kitchen and housing parts. When it became clear that, as Legislator Chairman Timothy Myers, Democrat Cheektowaga, put it, I don't think the appetite's there for an improved consolidated facility that would cost as much as $500 million. That lacked the appetite should have been accomplished by a resolve to start fixing existing problems that clearly aren't going to disappear. It was up to the Erie County administration, including County Executive Mark Poloncarz and the Sheriff's Office, to work together on an upgrade/maintenance plan to address chronic issues. Though Erie County Legislator John Gilmore notes that legislators aren't responsible for planning major county projects, spending the money needed to implement expensive maintenance projects would need the blessing of the legislator. Has any of this process been started? Will it take another backup, a flood, a fire, or even a death to bring home the urgency of these repairs? Just saying the county can't afford a new or even seriously improved jail right now does not make the problems with the existing facilities go away. Garcia, clearly irked that his urgings for drastic change had apparently not been heeded, wrote in a letter to the Erie County Legislature, the removal of this project without any further discussion about how to move forward sent an unfortunate message that this body neither cares about my staff nor our incarcerated population. Garcia is at least partially right. Further discussion is needed. It will take all the players, Sheriff's Office, Legislature, and the county administration to ensure that the existing county jails can continue their operations in safety. That work should have started months ago and must be expedited now.
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, the first one's by Adam Zeigler of the Buffalo News. And in, well, you know, the Olympics are going on, and one of the things that they have is ice dancing. What we have here in this picture is a member of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and he has grabbed Uncle Sam, and they are doing some ice dancing. But what they have spelled out on the skate area is the word fascism. So that's how they're skating in line with that. The second cartoon is by Tom Stiglich of Creator Syndicate, and basically what it is, it's a memorial to a tribute to Robert Duvall, who died recently. He was born 1931, 2026, and what the tribute shows is a drawing of his Academy Award for Tender Mercies in 1984. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:28. Turning to everybody's column. We must strengthen, not break, power grid. This is in response to another Voice op-ed. Data centers might break the grid? Good. Something has to. The author contends that rooftop solar and backyard wind electricity generation might be able to power many, maybe even most, homes without a grid connection. To be clear, I'm a strong proponent of renewable source of energy. My own home has solar panels that provide for all my electricity needs. But here's the key. That happens over the course of a calendar year. As I write this, my panels are under a foot of snow and are not producing any electricity. Were I not connected to the grid, my home would be cold and dark for most of the winter. I could invest in battery storage, but it would be ruinously expensive for the capacity needed to store enough for months of running a home. Here is why I said over the course of a year. During the warmer summer months, I overproduce electricity and receive a credit for that extra. And once again, this is possible because I feed that extra back into the grid. That reduces the burden on the power grid just when it needs to supply the greatest amount of power. No, the best course is not to break the grid, but to strengthen it, ensuring that there is adequate supply for all consumers. This way, even data centers have skin in the game and can act accordingly, rather than turning a blind eye to the needs of us all. This from James Hannett of Williamsville.
Thank you, Larry. Trump made a mockery of prayer breakfast. On February 5th, President Trump spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast. What was supposed to be a bipartisan gathering attended by members of Congress and others for an opportunity to pray for the nation instead became a showcase for a classic Trump performance filled with lies, egotistical arrogance, and malevolence. We should not be surprised that Trump would befoul such an event because we are dealing with a man for whom prayer is as foreign to him as common decency and who seems to consider the Ten Commandments simply as optional guidelines. However, what is even more disturbing is the fact that the Republican Party prostrates itself before him and enables his cruelty, bigotry, and disdain for the truth. America needs to pray and pray hard because love, compassion, and respect for the law are in very short supply in the Trump administration. All I could think of as I watched Trump's tirade were 4 words from the Lord's Prayer: deliver us from evil. And this is written by Richard W. Kuritz of Kenmore. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Clean Air Initiative makes economic sense. Governor Kathy Hochul is more eager to help Mayor Mamdani bring universal child care to New York City than she used to reduce energy prices for Western New Yorkers, leaving $3.3 billion in savings and economic development on the table. Study: WNY leaving billions on the table as Clean Air Initiative remains on hold, January 19th. Keeping the fully planned Clean Air Initiative, aka the Cap and Investment Program, under wraps is the least understandable of Hochul's numerous efforts to derail the cost-cutting 2019 clean energy mandate. Instead of using the Clean Air Initiative's revenue to invest in money-saving clean renewable projects, she's ignoring it and pivoting to costly nuclear power, which will leave us with unending supplies of radioactive waste. Hochul is a native-born Western New Yorker, so it's hard to fathom why she's so willing to shortchange the huge region of the state that gave her a political start. Many states, including Republican-dominated Texas and Iowa, are relying increasingly on solar and wind power to maintain year-round energy reliability right now. 10 years is the bare minimum of time it would take for nuclear power to start generating. Solar and battery energy storage smooth out demand on the grid. Wind power works when gas plants freeze. Waiting for nuclear power leaves us dependent on heavily polluting fossil fuels, a status Hochul is willing to inflict on us. Implementing the Clean Air Initiative would directly help Western New Yorkers. This from Deborah Cohen of Buffalo.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:33. Some opinion columns. This one is written by Kyle Scott, who is the Executive Director of Entrepreneurship at Lamar University in Beaumont, Texas. And this is another voice, and it's about development. Data centers don't help local economies grow. Data centers have become essential infrastructure. They power artificial intelligence, cloud computing, financial markets, and the digital services on which daily life depends. Some politicians, community advocates, and residents are pushing back on data center expansion, citing concerns about water, electricity, and tax breaks that don't generate a significant return to the community. Across the U.S., data centers are increasingly built in regions with cheap land, abundant energy, and generous tax incentives. State and local governments offer subsidies and long-term access to power and water. The promise is growth, but what communities often receive instead is a striking imbalance between investment and return. A single large data center can cost hundreds of millions while employing fewer than 50 people on a permanent basis. Most of the economic upside accrues to shareholders, firms, and consumers far removed from the places hosting the infrastructure. This is not economic development so much as asset utilization. Regions are valued primarily for what they can host, not for who lives there. Asset utilization, by contrast, extracts value without strengthening a region's capacity for future growth on its own terms. It treats places as interchangeable inputs rather than as economies. This reflects a broader assumption embedded in modern development policy, that opportunity should be mobile. When development strategies assume that people should simply leave in search of opportunity, they begin to view people as fungible assets rather than bonded creatures connected to a place. What are missing are systems that translate local knowledge into local ownership. This is where entrepreneurship matters. Locally owned firms embed decision-making power, reinvestment, and accountability in a place. They generate workforce development and civic leadership. None of this requires rejecting technology or innovation. The next phase of growth will rely heavily on place-bound industries, energy, advanced manufacturing, logistics, and healthcare. These are sectors where capital, skill, and local institutions must align over time. The difference between growth and development is not abstract. It shows up in who owns and who decides and who benefits. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From a Harrop. Nudity these days appears to be some type of submission. Some listeners who are not entirely sold on Chappell Roan's artistry brush off her songs and body stage persona as campy and loud. They see a flashy, attention-grabbing circus act. And even as Roan markets herself as an over-the-top lesbian, the styling still reads as catering to the male gaze. At the recent Grammy Awards, she drew maximum notice with exposed breasts and rings punched through the nipples. From those contraptions hung her dress straps.
God.
I want to hear the music, a rock critic told me. I don't necessarily want to see the bassoons. The really great female performers don't do that. Packaging symbolic acts of submission as a mark of sexual power makes some serious mental gymnastics. For starters, having holes punched through one's nipples and sticking metal objects through them is a painful process and a risk for infections. Pierced nipples are said to be an emblem of nonconformity. So would driving a rod through your hand? Award shows have turned into a kind of runway contest in boundary-pushing nudity. How much of the pubic area can they show? How much rear end can be revealed? And how little can be stuck over the breast and still count as dress? The spectacle often feels inversely related to the talent on display. Men aren't expected to sell themselves that way. At the Grammys, Bad Bunny showed up fully covered in an elegant black velvet tuxedo from Schiaparelli Couture. I recently joined friends at a hip urban restaurant on a brutally cold night. All the men and smart-looking women were dining bundled up in sweater layers and puffy vests, some with wool scarves still wrapped around the neck. In walked 6 young women in sleeveless shift dresses that ended about mid-thigh. They wore heels you wouldn't want to test on the ice outside. It was a Saturday night, and the fellow diners speculated that the girls were there to get picked up by some of the well-to-do male customers who frequent the place. The pretty young women looked quite available, but they left the restaurant unescorted. If they were looking for a date, they'd probably have done better browsing the stacks at a nearby bookstore. At the very least, they'd look less desperate. Valentine's Day has a way of exposing the lopsided gender bargain. It's supposed to be a dressed-up night out. Reservations, candles, the whole thing. Yet, far too often, only one half of the couple gets the memo, the female half. The woman arrives dolled up in a sparkly dress and spiky sandals. Her hair and makeup are done, her nails freshly polished. Her male companion? He's frequently in a sweatshirt and scruffy jeans. I've seen male partners in white tablecloth restaurants with backward baseball caps and bellies spilling out. No lie, I've even seen men in ribbed, sleeveless, wife-beater undershirts. And this inequality will continue through summer's water play. The girls will be wearing tiny patches of cloth on their breasts and bottoms, while the boys romp freely in baggy surfing shorts. The short's looser cut is built for movement, comfort, and coverage. But note how the girls on surfboards are still in that barely there swimwear. I'll bet that on Valentine's Day some women get nipple piercings to make themselves seem more desirable, at least in their minds. Then they'll be told to watch for redness, swelling, fever, and yellow-green ooze. Sold as rebellion, it's the high price that some women pay to satisfy someone else's fantasies. Hurting yourself to play sex toy reads like empowerment, or less like empowerment and more like submission, at least to me. But what do I know?
Green ooze, huh?
Oh.
I'm sorry. Oh, folks, sometimes it's hard to read.
Yeah.
Some business and financial news. Canadian metal maker expanding to the Falls. A Canadian company will expand to Niagara Falls to help reduce the financial impact it is feeling from the Trump administration's tariffs on aluminum and steel. Metalcraft Spinning and Stamping will invest $1.3 million in an existing building at 4120 Hyde Park Boulevard to establish a metals manufacturing facility, according to Empire State Development. The company expects to employ 17 people and is aiming to be in operation in April. Metalcraft is a fourth-generation family business based in Etobicoke, Ontario, a suburb west of Ontario. The company specializes in metal spinning, which allows the formation of shapes and geometrics to make smooth, weld-free objects. Its products are used in building systems, including roofing, commercial lighting, and HVAC. 70% of Metalcraft's customer base is in the United States, subjecting the company to significant cost pressures from the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration last year, according to Empire State Development. Establishing a local presence allows us to invest directly in the region by creating skilled manufacturing jobs, supporting local suppliers, and contributing to the long-term growth of the Niagara Falls industrial community, said Brian Rasson, Metalcraft's president, in a statement. Metalcraft is leasing the building, which was formerly home to a paint company. Empire State Development will provide $134,000 in tax credits through the Excelsior Jobs program. The tax credits are dependent on Metalcraft creating its pledged jobs. Even before the tariffs created new cost pressures for shipping products over the border, local business recruiters have pitched Canadian companies on setting up locations in western New York, partly for logistical advantages. Metalcraft's spinning decision to establish a U.S. foothold in Buffalo, Niagara is another strong signal of the region's growing appeal to Canadian manufacturers looking to expand their reach and strengthen their supply chain, said Matthew Hubacher, Senior Vice President at Invest Buffalo Niagara, which markets the region to companies. Welded Tube of Canada opened a $48 million facility in Lackawanna in 2013, supplying pipes to the oil and gas industry. Max Advanced Brakes, based in Markham, Ontario, is leasing space at a warehouse at 8 Dona Street in Lackawanna. It was the first U.S. distribution center for Max, which sells and distributes automotive brake parts. Worksport established a manufacturing operation on North American Drive in West Seneca and shifted its headquarters there from Toronto. The company makes covers for truck beds. LP Custom Machining, based in Stony Creek, Ontario, has selected a site in Niagara Falls to build a $7.3 million manufacturing facility, but paused that project due to wetlands issues, according to the Niagara County Industrial Development Agency. Metalcraft's announcement adds to a series of manufacturing relocation and expansion projects unfolding in Niagara County. Amercarb is planning an expansion of its Niagara Falls Boulevard facility in Niagara Falls. Allegheny Manufacturing is relocating to Van Buren Street in Niagara Falls from the town of Lockport. And Precision Machining is moving to North Tonawanda from suburban Rochester. Niagara County has also seen some manufacturing losses over the past year. Cascades last fall shut down its Norampac container board packaging plant on Packard Road, eliminating 123 jobs, and Nuttall Gear cut jobs at its town of Wheatfield location. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Like it or not, Chinese cars are inevitably coming to U.S. In a world being conquered by China's auto companies, one redoubt stands out: the United States. It deters Chinese companies with sky-high tariffs and a ban on auto software systems developed or controlled by them. It is also the biggest auto market in the world by revenue and one of the most profitable. China's auto giants would love to find a way in. Lately, there's been a drip, drip of signals that they might. Speaking last month in Detroit, of all places, President Trump said that if Chinese automakers wanted to build plants in the United States, he would love that. A recent report on the Financial Times that Ford Motor Company had held talks on collaborating with Xiaomi Corp, among others, on electric vehicles drew a denial from both companies. Ford's chief executive, Jim Farley, is, however, an outspoken fan of Xiaomi's EVs and generally talks of China's auto sector with awe, the biblical kind that comes with a dose of dread. The company is reportedly talking with another Chinese rival, Zhejiang Geely Holding Group company, about sharing factory capacity in Europe. Meanwhile, mirroring Trump's love-hate approach, Mike Stanton, who heads the National Automobile Dealers Association, told a conference crowd in Las Vegas this month that while 95% of his organization backs federal policies blocking imports of Chinese vehicles, we're not telling dealers not to take the Chinese franchises. China's automakers are taking the world by storm. Exports have surged nearly eightfold over the last 5 years, leapfrogging former number one Japan. Michael Dunn, a former auto executive turned consultant at Dunn Insights, said that some international markets companies are buying two Chinese pickups like SAIC Motor Corp, Ltd's Maxus, for almost the same price as one Ford Ranger or Toyota Tacoma, letting them run one out, then bring in the other one. Despite the public rhetoric, there is a quietly spoken view across and around the industry that Chinese vehicles can't be kept out of Fortress America forever. The analogy is strengthened by the forces gathering around the walls. Mexico has emerged as the number one destination for Chinese auto exports, and Canada has just agreed to a quota as part of its effort to hedge against an unfriendly Washington. U.S. auto companies could use the expertise and supply chains Chinese companies have built in electric and hybrid powertrains. U.S. drivers could use some cheaper but high-quality models in a market where new vehicles are increasing the preserve of high earners. Cheaper vehicles might also spur elusive sales growth, which is why dealers are more ambiguous about China. Dealers are asking me, who's the next Toyota? Who's the next Hyundai? We want to sign them up, Dunn said. In one sense, it's actually those Japanese and Korean brands that have the most to fear from the Chinese entry to the U.S. initiative anyway. That entry would have to be in the form taken by the likes of Toyota Motor Corp decades ago. That is, not imports, but instead building auto plants in the U.S. This could be done via U.S. majority-owned joint ventures, reversing the model China adopted itself starting in the 1990s. As for the ban on Chinese software operating systems, could be licensed from any number of U.S. developers from Ford to Waymo. Plus, Chinese entrants could be limited to entry-level models, at least initially. That would mitigate the threat to Detroit and its unionized workers because the U.S. automakers have largely abandoned that segment.
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Allen Douglas. Atkinson Patrick M. Berg Natasha. Cipolla Frank. Domagala John R. Gallasdorfer Gerard F. Gallmeyer David. Glasser Thelma Nayleader. Hoskins Lovey. Kankowitz Naceli Gina. Luby Thomas J. Lusk, Joan F. née Endenhofer. Silveri, Don. Taylor Lee, Quinetti. Trex, Thomas G. And some other obituaries. Frederick Wiseman, the celebrated director of Titicut Follies and dozens of other documentaries whose in-depth, unadorned movies comprised a unique and revelationary history of American institutions, died Monday at age 96. And the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson, a protege of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and two-time presidential candidate who led the civil rights movement for decades after the revered leader's assassination, died Tuesday. He was 84. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars, happy birthday for Wednesday, February 18th, 2026. You are tenacious and farsighted, and you have strong convictions. You are sensitive, spiritual, and focused. This is a fun-loving year of pleasure. Give yourself permission to let your guard down. Aries, 4 stars. You are more likely to be aware of the misfortunes of others, and if you can do something to help someone, you will. Tonight, solitude. Taurus, 5 stars. Your relations with friends are warm and reassuring today. Jot down some goals for the future. Tonight, friendships. Gemini, 4 stars. Today, the sun moved to the top of your chart to stay for the next 4 weeks. Symbolically, this means you're in a flattering spotlight. Tonight, you are admired. Cancer, 5 stars. This is a great time to study and explore publishing opportunities. Medicine and the law are also favored. Romance with someone different might blossom. Tonight, learn and explore. Leo, 4 stars. Relationships are affectionate and passionate. Ooh la la. Tonight, check your finances. Virgo, 4 stars. Enjoy time spent with partners, spouses, and close friends today. People will be friendly, warm, and loving. Tonight, be cooperative. Libra, 4 stars. Roll up your sleeves. You're in work mode. You can accomplish a lot today, in part because others will be helpful. Tonight, work and get organized. Scorpio, 5 stars. Get out and schmooze. Meet friends for a power breakfast, coffee, lunch, happy hour, whatever. Go out alone. Grab a matinee. Enjoy the vibes. Tonight, enjoy fun times. Sagittarius, 4 stars. Today, interactions with home and family today. Enjoy interactions with home and family today. This is also a great day to entertain. Invite the gang over for pizza and beer or quiche and wine, your choice. Tonight, cocoon at home. Capricorn, the next 4 weeks are promising for you with these 5 stars. You will be more upbeat, happy, and enthusiastic about life. Short trips, vacations, plus fun interactions with daily contacts will please you tonight. Conversations. Aquarius, 4 stars. Trust your money-making ideas. Not only will you attract money to you, you will also enjoy buying pretty things for yourself and loved ones. How sweet it is. Tonight, check your belongings. Pisces, 5 stars. Lucky you. Today, the sun and the moon, Mercury and Venus are in your sign, and the moon is lined up with Venus and lucky Jupiter. All hail Pisces. Enjoy schmoozing with others. This is a choose-your-adventure kind of a day. Tonight, you're powerful.
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise, using dry erase markers on mirrors. Dear Heloise, a lot of people use whiteboards to make lists and notes, but did you know that you can use dry erase markers on your bathroom mirror? It's easy to jot notes on the mirror while you're getting ready for the day, and more than likely, you will be back in that same bathroom throughout the day to see your notes. Additionally, you can write inspirational notes to yourself on the shower wall above where the water hits. And that's from Karen. Anti-dampness packets. Dear Heloise, I read Erica B's hint about storing vitamins in a refrigerator. I use the anti-dampness packets that come with my prescription meds. They work great with my gummy medications and vitamins. If they are safe for our prescriptions, then they are definitely safe for over-the-counter meds. I also use them in any dry dressing mixes or seasonings that tend to clump together once opened. From Priscilla. Emergency identification. Dear Heloise, as a more senior, I sometimes find myself in a position where people do not necessarily know me, and I would not normally carry a wallet that contains cash, credit cards, an ID, and such. To provide emergency contact information if needed, I do carry an expired driver's license with my emergency contact numbers written on the back of it. It takes up no room at all in my pocket and provides a recent photo, my current address, and any emergency information that is expected to be needed. From Mike. Mike, well, it's better than nothing, but you should also have your primary doctor's name and number with you, the name and phone number of a close relative who knows your medical needs, a list of medications you take, any medications you are allergic to, and your blood type. In the event you could not speak, all this information could be of great help to emergency medical services or your doctor. This information also fits neatly on an index card that can be slipped into your pocket. From Heloise. And blister pack mishap. Dear Heloise, I have a hint that might save someone a lot of unwanted pain. I take a prescription drug that I take once a week. It comes in a blister packet and is very difficult to open. I have been cutting the foil around the pill into about 1/2 inch squares that fit into my Sunday to Saturday pill holder. This seemed like a good idea until I didn't see the squares under the other pills in one of the daily sections and tossed everything in my mouth as usual to swallow with some water. Immediately the sharp edges of the blister card began cutting into my throat. I tried to swallow some more, not realizing a foil-covered pill was in my mouth. It then slipped over my windpipe and I started to choke, not being able to breathe. Running to the kitchen sink, I folded my body over the edge and made myself throw up. When I saw the blister card in the sink, I started to cry. I had never imagined that I could pop my pills without seeing a blister card. So this is my warning. Never cut out a section of pills that is smaller than 1 inch, whether it's square or round. Make sure that you keep these pills away from daily ones. It made a scary moment for my husband and me. From Patty. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From the Political Notebook, software will help court ID conflicts. The U.S. Supreme Court announced on Tuesday that it has adopted new software to assist in identifying whether a case poses a potential conflict of interest for the justices who decide for themselves whether to step aside from participation. The court in 2023 adopted its first formal code of conduct governing the ethical behavior of the justices. Some critics noted the absence of an enforcement mechanism and the authority of individual justices to decide for themselves whether to recuse. The court's ethics code states that justices should disqualify themselves in a case where their impartiality might reasonably be questioned. Trump says Rubio in talks with Cuba. President Trump said the U.S. government officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, are in discussions with Cuba's communist regime as the island nation faces worsening economic conditions. We're talking to Cuba right now, and Marco Rubio is talking to Cuba right now, Trump said Monday. Cuba should absolutely make a deal because it's a humanitarian threat, Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One. In the meantime, there's an embargo. There's no oil, there's no money, there's no anything. Daily life in Cuba has ground to a halt after the government lost its main patron when the U.S. captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in early January.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, February 18th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beaton
and Linda Renaud.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beeman.
On to some local and regional news. Kaleida to close inpatient services at Bradford Regional. Western New York's largest health system continues to make major changes to its services as it looks to bolster its long-term outlook. The latest example came Tuesday when Kaleida Health announced that its Bradford Regional Medical Center in Pennsylvania will end inpatient services and transition to an outpatient care center later this year, a move that will affect more than 200 employees. Pending approval from the Pennsylvania Department of Health, Kaleida expects Bradford Regional's inpatient, emergency, and long-term care services to close by mid-year. If and when that is approved, Bradford Regional will become an ambulatory outpatient care model with a focus on primary care and specialty clinics. The closure will affect the hospital's 20-bed inpatient unit, where the average daily census is fewer than one patient per day so far this year, according to Kaleida, which said inpatient use at Bradford Regional has declined by 73% since 2019. Due to regulatory limitations, the closure notice filed Tuesday with the state also included Bradford Regional's emergency department, certain hospital-based services, and a pavilion, a 95-bed long-term care facility that is rated 3 stars or average in federal records. Kaleida expects the 54 residents currently living at the pavilion to be able to smoothly relocate for continued care. Kaleida said there are 2 other long-term care options in Bradford and 6 others in the area. Kaleida said the 238 employees who will be affected by the closures at Bradford Regional will be offered opportunities to transition to other positions within the health system. Bradford Regional Medical Center and Olean General Hospital are part of the Upper Allegheny Health System, which affiliated with Kaleida in 2017 and is under the umbrella of the larger Buffalo Health System. In a news release Tuesday, Kaleida said Bradford Regional, operating in an area with declining populations, has lost an average of $10.1 million each year since 2021. The move fits into the $200 million system-wide improvement plan that Kaleida launched last year. Kaleida accelerated the timeline of that plan in response to the federal One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is projected to reduce Medicaid spending by about $1 trillion nationwide by 2034. Once Pennsylvania signs off on the plan, Bradford Regional will continue operation of its primary care offices and specific specialty outpatient clinics, including cardiology, medical oncology, pediatrics, general surgery and wound care, orthopedics and sports medicine, occupational health, women's health, urology, and a lab draw station. Kaleida is exploring integrating certain imaging services into those clinics. This isn't the first time Kaleida has scaled back services in Bradford. In December 2024, Kaleida ended money-losing behavioral health sciences at Bradford Regional in an effort to ensure the medical center could be sustainable in the future. Olean General Hospital, about 20 miles or a half-hour drive from Bradford, has received some planned investments from Kaleida. The health system, for instance, received state funding to add a comprehensive psychiatric emergency program at Olean General. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. And we have next the Benderson seeking to reuse old Bonton site as a medical office article. Benderson Development Company may have found just the right medicine for a vacant former store building in its Sheridan, Delaware Plaza. 6 years after unveiling a reuse plan for the vacant space at the Town of Tonawanda Retail Plaza, the development company giant said it has found a medical user for the first floor of the 2-story building. It did not identify the potential tenant. Benderson now wants to renovate the 94,000 square foot structure, which has sat largely vacant since Bonton filed for bankruptcy and closed its stores in 2018. Benderson is asking the town for approval to modify the facade by taking out all of the upper floor glass, since the second floor will be dead space, according to a letter to the town from Benderson attorney and entitlement director James A. Buglioli. Only 31,975 square feet of space will be used. It also wants to reconfigure the parking lot and main entry drive lanes north of the building to increase the parking and install raised pedestrian crosswalks. And it wants to add more parking on the east and west sides of the building that would be accessible under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Benderson Vice President Eric Rassoon said the developer hasn't finalized a lease. Instead, he said Benderson is trying to be proactive with municipal approvals so it can start right away. The Plaza, one of the area's oldest open-air shopping centers, has been owned by Benderson since 1997. Bordered by Delaware Avenue, Delaware Road, Sheridan Drive, and Thorncliffe Road, it has been anchored by a 56,899 square foot Tops Market grocery store. The Bon-Ton was formerly an M&A store. Benderson received town approval in May of 2020 for a plan to redevelop the closed store and the related Bon-Ton home store, which was also part of the plaza at 1692 and 1752 Sheridan Drive. That plan called for demolition of the 30,454 square foot home store to be replaced with a pair of 8,400 square foot outbuildings with drive status. The demolition was completed and a new 4-unit retail building was constructed with Starbucks Coffee and Rachel's Mediterranean on either end, and Jersey Mike's and Tropical Cafe in between. But the project also included modifications to the north section of the Bon-Ton building and changes to the facade. Another component of the plan involved converting the department store into 63,000 square feet of medical offices and additional retail space. 3 of the 5 retail spaces are occupied, included by Northwest Savings Bank, Great Clips, and Cloud Nail Bar, with 2 spaces of 3,258 and 616 square feet still available. Housing project approved. The Town Planning Board separately approved a project by Alden architect Mark W. Tiedermans Giuseppe Holdings to develop 60 units of workforce housing and community space for a cafe, kayak rental, and bicycle rentals at 4630 River Road. The project would include 3 apartment buildings and 20 units each, with 3 one-bedroom and 2 two-bedroom units per floor. It would be located on the northwest side of the road along the Niagara River, northeast of the South Grand Island bridges, along with a boardwalk and a series of 19 boat slips. Giuseppe introduced a project in 2011 that called for development of 19 townhomes and boat docks, but then modified the plan 2 years later with 3 buildings and the boat docks. He received approval but never proceeded. Last year he came back with the new project, which was reviewed by the town from September through December before winning final approval. Meanwhile, the Brooklyn Investment Group that bought the vacant former Kenwell Senior Living Center at 3456 Delaware Avenue, formerly called Oakwood, is trying again with its plan to redevelop the 44,000 square foot assisted living facility into senior apartments. The original proposal by LMSM Equities was approved in November 2021 and extended through May 2024, but no work was done. However, the group contacted the town in October to restart. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. 2 shorts. First one is World War II era fuel tank filled with mixture of pollutants. A scar from Tonawanda's industrial past is one step closer to being cleaned up, now that a report has been released by the State Department of Environmental Conservation to determine the contents of the tank. The next step in the long cleanup process can begin. The so-called Tank 75 was built during World War II to hold fuel oil. It was constructed on the former 20-acre Ashland oil refinery property at 4625 River Road, bordered now by Interstate 190, the Niagara River, and the 89-acre Seaway site landfill. It is massive and it is full. The tank holds an estimated 4.2 million gallons of water, more than the volume of 6 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The tank also contains approximately hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil and 5,950 cubic yards of oily, thick sludge at its bottom, according to a new report published by the State Department of Environmental Conservation last week. In addition to the tank being filled with a polluted petroleum mix, the soil around it is also contaminated. The soil shows evidence of petroleum and other harmful pollutants, the investigation found. The tank is part of New York State's Superfund program, which identifies and characterizes suspected inactive hazardous waste disposal sites. Sites that pose a significant threat to public health and the environment go through a process of investigation, evaluation, cleaning, and monitoring according to the DEC. The DEC's new remedial investigation report comes after the state agency entered into a consent order with Ashland in 2022, requiring the company to investigate the pollution at the tank and determine how it could be cleaned up. Now, the next step in the Superfund program process can begin. Ashland must evaluate ways to possibly clean up the site and remove the pollution. Ashland owned the property until 1992, when United Refining Company bought it. However, the Kentucky-based Ashland Petroleum Company retained ownership of Tank 75. The tank was in service from the 1940s through 1980 and has since been sitting idle. Tank 75 measures about 200 feet wide by 300 feet long and about 28 feet deep. Because of the shortage of steel during the war, the tank was built using reinforced steel mesh and 3 to 4 inch lining of gunite, a concrete-like material. Fuel oil, asphalt, and other refinery sludge were all placed in the tank at some point during its life, according to the investigation report. The investigation found that the soil around the tank appeared to be contaminated with unsafe levels of substances including benzene, toluene, acetone, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PCBs, various metals, and perfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS. And the second article, Naval Park will show documentary about black and female heroes of World War II. During World War II, the United States found itself with a 2-year backlog of undelivered mail destined for U.S. troops. The 688th Central Postal Directory Battalion was tasked with clearing it. As the only all-black, all-female unit deployed overseas during the war, the members worked tirelessly to clear the massive backlog, which restored morale among the troops. A documentary was made about their efforts called Two Wars, No Mail, Low Morale. The Buffalo Naval Park will host a free screening of the documentary, followed by a question and answer session on Thursday. The screening will take place at 2 p.m. Thursday in the Buffalo Naval Park's hangar building, 1 Naval Park Cove. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Child abuse case overturned amid concern about deepfake. Video depicting sexual abuse of a child provided to police by a man who hacked into a home security camera was not sufficiently authenticated in a 2022 Erie County child abuse case, a divided Court of Appeals ruled Tuesday. In a 4-3 decision reversing an appellate court ruling, the state's top court said an Erie County family court judge relied on 3 videos, the only evidence of abuse in the case, despite failing to require enough proof it was genuine. The question at issue is whether the proponent of the evidence has done enough to establish its reliability, the court's majority said in its opinion. Here, the confluence of factors, including the bizarre circumstances surrounding the discovery of the videos and the long time period between their creation and their recovery, raised doubts about the authenticity, and the agency simply failed to carry its burden to dispel these doubts. The dissenting judges warned that the majority opinion would make it more difficult to authenticate video evidence and protect abuse victims while making it easier for abusers to escape accountability. Lower courts and those tasked with protecting children from abuse will be left to sort through the havoc the majority's opinion will wreak, Judge Shirley Troutman wrote in one of 2 dissents. The video in the case came from a central New York man being investigated by the FBI for possessing child sexual abuse material in January 2022. The videos were recorded in May, June, and July 2019. Family Court Judge Sharon Lavallo concluded in December 2022 that a mother and her then-boyfriend, the man in the videos, committed child abuse. But the mother and the then-boyfriend appealed their cases to the Appellate Division, 4th Department, but only the mother took her case to the Court of Appeals. Chief Judge Rowan Wilson, who penned the majority's opinion, was joined by Judges Jenny Rivera, Anthony Canataro and Caitlin Halligan. Judges Michael Garcia and Madeline Singas concurred with Troutman's dissent, while Singas wrote a separate dissent with which Garcia concurred. The ruling negates the child abuse findings against the mother, who the court determined to have abused the girl and committed derivative abuse against the boy. Derivative abuse occurs when the actions occurred against one child demonstrate impaired judgment on the part of a parent, which creates substantial risk of harm to other children in that person's care. The boy had been in foster care because of the court's findings against his mother. Lavallo ordered the video destroyed in August 24, which the Court of Appeals majority noted was a month after the mother sought leave to appeal her case to the High Court. Destruction of evidence before the exhaustion of the appellate process and any subsequently ordered proceedings below should not be countenanced, the majority said. Attorneys argued the case before the High Court on January 7th. During the original family court proceeding, an FBI agent testified he did not make any observation that led him to believe the video footage had been tampered with or altered in any way, according to an appellate court ruling. The agent was not deemed an expert witness in court. Attorneys for the mother argued the video could have been authenticated by an expert, but one was not called to testify. Failing to authenticate evidence does not mean the evidence was false, but only that it was not properly authenticated according to the rules of evidence, the court majority ruled. In Singas' dissenting opinion, the judge wrote, she believes the majority fails to apprehend the broader consequences of its ruling. Taken to its logical conclusion, the majority holding radically alters the authentication landscape, with unknown effects of which the majority appears entirely unknown. Several friend of the court briefs were filed in this case, including by the Center for Integrity in Forensic Sciences, an organization seeking to improve the reliability of scientific evidence in courts across the country. The rules of evidence protect abused children from their abusive parents, but those rules also protect non-abused children from being wrongfully torn from loving, innocent mothers. Carolyn Kubicek, attorney for Center for Integrity in Forensic Sciences, said in email, the Court of Appeals correctly ruled that a person who possesses a video that he wants a judge to consider must be able to show that the video is legit and not simply the malevolent creation of an admitted pedophile who was trying to get out of a jam that he himself created. The mother, who had moved out of her then-boyfriend's home and into her own home before a decision was reached in family court, was represented in the case by the Center for Family Representation, which also issued a statement following the Supreme Court's decision. We welcome the court's clear statement that the rules of evidence apply in family court no less than in other courts, Attorney Emily Wall said in an emailed statement. Families should not be torn apart based on evidentiary shortcuts that erode the protection meant to ensure accurate determinations. This is a major victory for families, including any client and her son, who will finally be reunited after 4 long years of separation. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:18. On to some sports. Little information about the American bobsledder who got a boost to the gold. It was a couple of weeks before Christmas. Elena Myers-Taylor was in Norway prepping for a World Cup bobsled weekend. Things were going horribly. Her body was hurting. She wondered if she was doing right by her 2 deaf children, and the racing results were, well, bad. So she texted her husband. The message, I'm done. This is just impossible, the U.S. bobsledding great wrote. It's never going to work. Funny how an Olympic gold medal changes things. Barely 2 months after nearly quitting, her husband, former bobsledder Nick Taylor, flew to Norway after those texts to talk her out of it. Myers-Taylor won the women's monobob gold medal at the Milan Cortina Games, and she was back on the ice Tuesday prepping with Jaden O'Brien for the 2-woman race that starts Friday. The only thing that's really changed is that I'm sleep deprived now, Myers-Taylor said. I'm an Olympic gold medalist with a lack of sleep. Well, that's a good problem to have. At 41, she became the oldest woman to win an individual gold medal in Winter Games history. Myers' sixth career Olympic medal tied Bonnie Blair for the most by a U.S. woman in the Winter Games, and it also extended her record for most medals by a black woman on the Winter Showcase. "Oh, I don't think I'm going to process this for a while," Myers-Taylor said. "There are so many moments during this entire season, during his past 4 years, that we just thought it was impossible, or I thought it wasn't possible. My team around me believed in me the entire time. Turns out so did her husband's team. Nick Taylor is now a performance coach and works with the NBA's San Antonio Spurs. When a Spurs player, the couple won't say who, learned Myers-Taylor was struggling, Nick Taylor was gifted a plane ticket and told to go to Norway immediately. Without that gift, who knows what would have happened. As soon as I saw E had won, I just started screaming, jumping, hugging everyone who was close, almost passed out because I was excited," said O'Brien, a bobsled rookie who was recruited to the team last fall by Myers-Taylor and now is an Olympian. "Without a doubt, the coolest sports moment I've ever been part of." Myers-Taylor, just in case, spent part of Monday before the final 2 monobob runs teaching her 2 sons sign language for various terms like gold medal and Olympic champion. She insists she didn't think they would actually need to use it. She and her husband want a 3rd child. Myers-Taylor has said countless times that she feels lucky to have her kids on tour, but it's a daunting task even with a nanny there to assist. Traveling with 3 might be too much. Besides, there's nothing else to prove. She's won everything the sport offers. "I was determined to keep fighting, determined to just put down the best runs I could," Myers-Taylor said. "And look what happened." Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Playoff chase picks up. Sabres to hit the ice for practice a week before Olympic break ends. Making the playoffs is a very real possibility for the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres, who weren't competing in the Winter Olympics in Milan Cortina d'Ampezzo, Italy, returned to practice at 11 a.m. Wednesday at Lecom Harbor Center. The NHL resumes its schedule February 25th, and when the Sabres play the Devils in New Jersey, they're in a position to build upon the momentum they created in the first 57 games of the season. The Sabres, 32-19-6, are in the first wild card spot in Eastern Conference with 70 points, 1 point ahead of Boston and 5 points clear of Columbus and Washington, each with 65. The Sabres now face their biggest fight, earn a playoff berth in the final 25 games of the season, and do it by creating separation in the conference and in the Atlantic Division. Here's who will help the Sabres after the Olympic break, and what we learned so far this season, and a prediction for the immediate future for the team's playoff pursuit. 3 players to watch. Connor Timmins, defenseman. When Timmins returns to the lineup, the Sabres will get another physical defenseman whose forte is shot blocking, and someone who will take the pressure of extra minutes off the top 4. Timmins established himself as a physical presence who could block shots 70 in 33 games before he sustained a broken leg December 18th against Philadelphia. Timmins averaged nearly 20 minutes of ice time a game, including nearly 3 minutes a game of shorthanded ice time. By comparison, Rasmus Dahlin averages 24 minutes, 33 seconds of ice time per game. Matthias Samuelsson, 23:03, Owen Power, 21:40, and Bowen Byram, 22:30. Josh Norris, center. When Norris returns to the lineup, he'll improve the Sabres' face-off proficiency. The Sabres are last in the NHL in face-off percentage, 44.7, 1,459 wins, and 1,808 losses, and add depth and experience at center. Norris is expected to return from a rib injury sustained January 14th against Philadelphia. Norris is at 49.2%, 121 wins and 125 losses on face-offs in 19 games. Ryan McLeod and Tage Thompson have handled the bulk of face-offs for the Sabres. McLeod is 46.6%, 43 out of 492, and Thompson 45.9%, 294 out of 346. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, goalie. When Luukkonen returns, he will give the Sabres a number one starter and goal. Luukkonen missed the last 5 games before the Olympic break with a lower body injury sustained January 27th. He didn't play for Finland in the Olympics. There's no clear timeline for his return, but when he returns, it will create a hierarchy among the 3 goalies and could possibly make Colton Ellis trade bait if general manager Jarmo Kekalainen decides to deal at the trade deadline at 3 p.m. on March 6. 2 surprises. Josh Doan, left wing, acquired in June in a trade with Utah for J.J. Peterka. Doan has already proven his worth and was rewarded in January with a 7-year contract extension with an average annual value of $6.95 million. Doan is versatile, gritty, and crafty, particularly around the opposing goal, and he has become an asset on the power play. Of his 18 goals and 21 assists, 7 goals and 14 assists have come on the man advantage, and he has 35 takeaways and 53 hits in 57 games. Matthias Samuelsson, defenseman. Less than 9 months ago, the Sabres, there was an outcry to buy out Samuelsson, who was painted as an underachiever after 2 injury-hampered seasons. Samuelsson came to training camp in September fully healthy with a stronger understanding of head coach Lindy Ruff's philosophies and expectations, and has emerged as a physical defenseman who can block shots, 112 so far, score goals, and create plays. 11 goals, 23 assists in 55 games, already a career best, particularly working with the Sabres' top defensive pairing with Dahlin. He's also a team best plus 28. Leaders lead. Alex Tuch helped Vegas to a lengthy playoff runs in 2018, 2020, and 2021, including a run to the 2018 Stanley Cup Final. Alex Lyon helped Florida start its current dynasty in 2023. Byram won the Stanley Cup with Colorado in 2022, and Jason Zucker has been on playoff teams 9 times since he began his NHL career in the spring of 2011. There's a lot of playoff experience on this team, so the majority of the roster will learn as it goes about how to navigate this process, carrying over all that consistency that created the first 57 games of the season. Bold prediction. Don't expect the Sabres to move Tuch at the trade deadline, especially if they're in contention for a playoff spot. Tuch doesn't just want a playoff berth in Buffalo. The wing made a weighty statement after a 4-0 win January 29th against Los Angeles. Everybody's coming in trying to prove themselves, and we're trying to prove as a team that we're legit. We're not just going for the playoffs, we're going for the Stanley Cup. Kekalainen, the Sabres general manager, is strategic. Consider this gambit from 7 years ago in Columbus. The Blue Jackets kept goalie Sergei Bobrovsky and wing Artemi Panarin at the trade deadline in March 2019 rather than trade them. Both became free agents that summer. The Blue Jackets gambled, make Bobrovsky and Panarin key cogs in a lengthy playoff run. Columbus swept Tampa Bay, heavy Stanley Cup favorites that year.
Thank you, Larry. 2 shorts. First one is Pegula to lead efforts on changing tennis calendar. Jessica Pegula, Buffalo native and a 2024 U.S. Open runner-up, will lead a new 13-person panel to suggest changes to the women's tennis calendar, rankings, points, rules, and the requirements about competing in certain events, according to a letter sent Tuesday by WTA Tour Chair Valerie Camillo to players and tournament officials. There has been a clear sentiment across the tour that the current calendar does not feel sustainable for players given the physical, professional, and personal pressures of competing at the highest level, Camillo, who became chair in November, wrote in a letter, a copy of which was obtained by the Associated Press. The 5th-ranked Pegula, who will chair the council, has a unique perspective as a top player and is widely respected for her thoughtful, collaborative approach, Camillo said. Other active players on the council are Victoria Azarenka of Belarus, a 2-time Australian Open champion and former number 1, Maria Sakkari of Greece, a 2-time Grand Slam semi-finalist who has been rated as high as number 3, and Katie Volnets of the U.S., who is currently number 96. And the second short is going back to the Olympics. The disqualified skeleton racer gifted $200,000. The Ukrainian skeleton racer who was disqualified from the Olympics was given a gift of more than $200,000 on Tuesday to help him keep competing and advocating for his country. Vladimir Herskovich was barred from Olympic competition last week because he insisted on wearing a helmet of memory adorned with images of more than 20 Ukrainian athletes and coaches killed during the country's war with Russia. Ukrainian businessman Renat Akhmetov, the owner of the Shakhtar Donetsk soccer club and the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol, gave the money to Herskovich from his charity foundation. The amount is equal to what the country's Olympic gold medalists would get. Vlad Herskovich was denied the opportunity to compete for victory at the Olympic Games, yet he returns to Ukraine a true winner, Akhmetov said in a statement. The pride and respect he has earned among Ukrainians through his actions are the highest reward. At the same time, I want him to have enough energy and resources to continue his sporting career, as well as to fight for truth, freedom, and remembrance of those who gave their lives for Ukraine. The money is set to be paid to the 27-year-old Herskovich Charity Foundation to ensure the athlete and his coaching staff have the necessary resources to continue their sporting career and their advocacy for Ukraine on the international stage, a statement on behalf of Akhmetov's foundation said.
Thank you, Linda. Epenesa's future with the Bills up in the air. Pending free agent made his mark on first and second downs. When Buffalo Bills defensive end A.J. Epinesa reflected on his past season, he looked at how he tried to take advantage of what opportunities I had. I think I just established that level of consistency that the coaches have been kind of looking for, especially on a first and second down basis, Epinesa said on his personal improvements. You know, with having limited options on third down, where I'm going to make my money is on first and second, and so just accepting that role and playing it to the best of my ability. Epinesa was speaking before head coach Sean McDermott was fired and several members of the defensive coaching staff were replaced. Moving forward under new defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard, Buffalo defense will see some shifts. It's unclear if Epinesa, a pending free agent, will be part of those plans. Originally a second-round pick of the Bills in 2020, out of Iowa, Epinesa re-signed with the team on a 2-year deal in 2024 as the Bills reconstruct their defensive line. Epinesa, 27, is interested in staying with the only place he knows. I have a lot of love for this place, so just take it as it goes, Epinesa said in January. A locker room cleanout. It was too early for Epinesa to have had tangible discussions with the Bills about his future. And again, the tenor of the defense has morphed since then. No words have been discussed between me and the Bills, just trying to adjust everything from the divisional round loss, Epinesa said at the time. Sportrac projects Epinesa's average annual value at $6.44 million. Epinesa finished the season with 2.5 sacks, all coming in a 4-week span. Each of those came on second down as he took advantage of his early down rotations. Still, it was a drop-off statistically from the previous 3 years, when he had 6.5 sacks in 2022 and 2023 and 6.0 sacks in 2024. Epinesa's role was bound to change this past season as the Bills added Joey Bosa to the mix and tinkered with a number of rookie defensive linemen. When the Bills general manager Brandon Beane reflected on rookie third-round pick Landon Jackson, who was put on injured reserve in October, he made an unprompted comparison to Epinesa.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:34. On to Asking Eric. Estranged adult daughter's feud distresses mother. Dear Eric, I have 2 daughters that are estranged. I do not want to get in the middle of it, but it is getting ridiculous. Daughter 1 did not want daughter 2 to marry her choice in husbands, but she did anyway. Now a few years have passed and the situation is worse. Daughter 1 will not communicate with 2 and won't even acknowledge her new baby, and even seeing a photo of the baby can set her off. The hate for number 2's husband, who is a very good father and husband, is so bad that number 1 says she won't even set foot in the same state as he. Daughter number 1's husband seems to support her in whatever choices she makes. They live in separate states and do not live near me either, so until my funeral they probably won't see each other. Do I continue to ignore this situation in time? Hopes in hopes that time will be the great healer. From Sad Mother. Dear Mother, from the way you've described things, this conflict is fairly one-sided. Daughter 1 made the ultimatum that wasn't hers to make and is now punishing your second daughter and by extension the rest of the family because of it. Surely there's more to it, there always is, but I really can't blame Daughter 2 for saying enough is enough. I'm tempted to say ignore it, but judging by the amount of information you know about the situation, it seems like you're hearing updates anyways. Inserting yourself into this situation will only cause more stress. However, you can think critically about how this estrangement is impacting your individual relationships with each daughter and respond from that place. You may need to tell one or both of them that you're stepping back from hearing about it, and by extension worrying about it, to preserve your own peace. Alternatively, if their refusal to see each other is keeping you from something you want or need, you can tell them that too. You likely can't bridge the gap between them, but you can make your relationship with each of them healthier by knowing when to say, I love you both, but you're adults and I'm going to let you handle this. See how you fit. Dear Eric, my family is very passive-aggressive. Often it is expressed by failing to include me in family events or even inform me of them. Many times these are important events like wedding, graduation, funeral, etc. I haven't done anything bad to deserve this treatment. I'm definitely not a type A personality like my siblings, nor am I concerned with money, status, or fitting in with the Joneses. I have lived my life my own way, discarding the constant advice and direction from my family. Their constant criticism was very hurtful, and my psychologist helped me deal with it. However, I now have metastatic cancer and still have 3 siblings that rarely contact me. I don't want anything from them except their moral support and prayers. Is there a way to make this happen? From Cancer Warrior. Dear Warrior, I'm sorry you're going through this, both the diagnosis and the lack of support from your family. I want to preface my advice with a caveat. Your family may not be able to show up for you in the way that you want or need. The history that you've described indicates they may not understand the way that you want to be communicated with and loved. So while it's possible to ask for what you want, and I encourage you to do so, it's also important to make sure that you get the support you're looking for elsewhere. That may come from friends or other loved ones or a community, neighbors, a religious organization, a social group. It may also come from a cancer support group if you find that works for you. The top priority right now is that you are getting the emotional care that you need for this journey. Years of family misalignment or mistreatment aren't going to go away overnight, and so some forms of contact might do more harm than good. That said, you can reach out to your family with a specific request. I have metastatic cancer. That would really help me if you'll pray for me. Can you do that? Or it would really encourage me if you'd commit to reaching out once a week by phone. Is that something you can do? The specifics are important because one person's keeping in touch may not match another person's expectation. And again, if they can't or won't show up for you in the way that you need, that doesn't mean no one will. Once you figure out what the ideal support looks like, feel free to ask others for it too. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Project Iceworm. Cold War plan to hide nukes in Greenland explains distrust of U.S. As the threat of nuclear war loomed during the Cold War, the U.S. Army hatched a top-secret plan to conceal hundreds of missile launchers on rail lines hidden beneath thick ice sheets in Greenland. In case of a Soviet attack, nukes dispersed in thousands of miles of cut-and-cover tunnels could be launched within 20 minutes. The name for the project was Project Iceworm. Iceworm formed part of the broader U.S. polar strategy, which saw the Arctic as a crucial arena for Cold War nuclear deterrence, a direct route for both Soviet attack and U.S. strategic defense, said Christian Nielsen, a historian of science at Aarhus University in Denmark and co-author of the book Camp Century, the untold story of America's secret Arctic military base under the Greenland ice. American fascination with Greenland as a forward military position is not new. Neither are Danish and Greenlandic doubts about the trustworthiness of the U.S. During the Cold War, several military initiatives were never disclosed to Greenlanders or the Danes. When the Iceworm documents were declassified in 1996, they caused tension and unease because they suggested the U.S. had explored major military plans in Greenland without informing Denmark, Nielsen said. The Danish government repeatedly rejected President Donald Trump's call to take over or buy Greenland, a semi-autonomous Danish territory. Public opinion polls showed Greenlanders overwhelmingly oppose U.S. control. Though Project Iceworm never became reality, its history and that of U.S. military activity in Greenland explain wariness over Trump's plans for the island. Greenland may still play a role in emerging U.S. missile defense initiatives, such as the Golden Dome, early warning systems, or hosting interceptor capabilities, though nothing resembling Iceworm's underground missile network, Nielsen said. At the World Economic Forum in Switzerland this year, Trump ruled out using military force to take the island, but insisted the United States needs Greenland for national security. All we are asking for is to get Greenland, including right, title, and ownership, because you need the ownership to defend it, he said. You can't defend it on a lease. City under ice. In the 1960s, the Department of Defense evaluated Project Iceworm. The U.S. operated Camp Century, a nuclear-powered scientific post in northwestern Greenland, almost 130 miles away from the island's coast, also a site for covert military activity. By that time, the Army touted the base as a cutting-edge city under ice for Arctic research and PR campaigns on American media, while also secretly using it as a test bed to determine whether missile tunnels under the ice sheet were feasible. The concept takes advantage of northern Greenland's remoteness from populated areas, its relative closeness to Soviet targets, the unique adaptability of the ice cap to nuclear deployment, and the proximity of the Thule base, according to a 1962 declassified Army report titled The U.S. Army's Iceworm Concept that Nielsen forwarded to the Times. Thule, now called Pituffik Space Base, was one of several military installations established during World War II. It once hosted as many as 10,000 U.S. military personnel. In 1946, 3 years before the creation of NATO, the Truman administration proposed buying Greenland for $100 million in gold, but the Danes didn't accept the bid, according to the Department of State's documents declassified in the 1970s. Plans for Project Iceworm considered placing about 600 missiles at least 4 miles apart in a deployment as large as Alabama, according to the report. Mounted on rail lines, the missiles could be moved about to evade Soviet detection. This setup, the report said, would allow launch sites to be relatively invulnerable to enemy warheads, requiring a massive blanket Soviet thermonuclear attack to destroy Iceworm launchers. The missiles would be hidden 28 feet beneath the surface of the ice cap, almost the height of a 3-story building. For that reason, scientists drilled into Greenland's ice core to study its sublayers and assess if iceworm tunnels were viable. The work produced a non-military benefit by gathering data that helped to reveal Earth's climate history over the last 100 years, said Ronald Dole, a professor of history at Florida State University who co-edited the book Exploring Greenland, Cold War Science and Technology on Ice. Iceworm's potential promise certainly helped government officials to endorse and embrace the construction of Camp Century, he said. At the time, research on Greenland's environment was indeed required to successfully operate there and elsewhere in the Arctic. Some of those findings, for instance, were crucial for uncovering the effects of climate change. The frozen soil and ice collected underneath Camp Century provided scientists with early, lengthy, and detailed record of Earth's climate, pioneering the kind of paleoclimatologic research that showed how human activities warm the planet. Toxic legacy. Project Iceworm was shelved in 1962 after it was deemed too technically difficult. The ice sheet shifts, and as the Navy and Air Force pursued less burdensome projects in Greenland, American officials weren't sure if Danes would back the endeavor. When Camp Century was decommissioned about 5 years after Project Iceworm was scrapped, the Army left hazardous waste behind, including 52,000 gallons of diesel and radioactive materials. residues from the small nuclear reactor that powered the base. Now, as the island's ice melts because of climate change, those contaminants might be thrown into the environment. The remnants of Camp Century are being carried to the west coast of Greenland as ice flows in the ice cap, and at some point will be exposed. As the Inuit gained more political independence from Denmark in the last few decades, such as home rule status, it also may foster a far more fierce opposition against American military moves on the island. Today, Iceworm serves mainly as a historical reminder that the U.S. has often viewed Greenland primarily through a security lens, Nielsen said, with limited consideration for Greenlandic political interests.
Thank you, Larry. Next article, rising risk. Colorectal cancer is being diagnosed in more young adults. Here are symptoms to watch for. Colorectal cancer is a threat not just to older adults, but increasingly young men and women, too. It's now the top cancer killer of Americans younger than 50. The deaths of Dawson's Creek actor James Van Der Beek at 48 earlier this month, and Black Panther star Chadwick Boseman at 43 in 2020 highlight the risk for younger adults. We're now starting to see more and more people in the 20, 30, and 40-year-old range developing colon cancer. At the beginning of my career, nobody at that age had colorectal cancer, said Dr. John Marshall of Georgetown University's Lombardi Comprehensive Cancer Center, who has been a cancer doctor for more than 3 decades. That trend is shaking us all, to be blunt, said Marshall, who also is medical consultant to the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. Here's what to know about colorectal cancer at any age and how to protect yourself. How common is colorectal cancer? More than 158,000 cases of colorectal cancer will be diagnosed in the U.S. this year, according to the American Cancer Society. Among all ages, it's the nation's second leading cancer killer, behind lung cancer, and expected to claim more than 55,000 lives this year. For the population overall, cases and deaths have inched down in recent years. That's thanks in part to screening tests that can spot tumors early when they're easier to treat or even prevent them if precancerous growths are found and removed. Who's most at risk? The vast majority of colorectal cancer cases and deaths still are in people 50 and older. That older age group has seen the most progress, with deaths dropping by about 1.5% a year over the past decade, according to Cancer Society statistics. But while it's still relatively rare in the under 50 crowd, the colorectal cancer diagnoses have been rising since the early 2000s. In January, Cancer Society researchers reported that colorectal cancer mortality in Americans under 50 had increased by 1.1% a year since 2005, becoming the deadliest cancer in that age group. This year, the Society estimates 3,890 people under age 50 will die of it. Risk factors at any age include obesity, lack of physical activity, a diet high in red or processed meat, and low in fats and low in fruits and vegetables, smoking, heavy alcohol use, having inflammatory bowel disease, or family history of colorectal cancer. Marshall advises everyone to eat lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains. Meat's not evil, but eat less of it, he said. In a recent study found a 3-year exercise program improved survival in colon cancer patients and reduced cancer recurrence. What are the symptoms? Symptoms include blood in the stool or rectal bleeding, changes in bowel habits such as diarrhea, constipation, or narrowing of stool that lasts more than a few days, unintended weight loss, and cramps or abdominal pain. Don't ignore symptoms, get it checked, Marshall stressed. Survival is far more likely when colorectal cancer is diagnosed early, before it spreads. When should people get screened? Medical guidelines say the average person should start getting screened at age 45, too late for some young adults. People known to be at higher risk are supposed to talk with their doctors about whether to start screening even earlier. How often people need to get checked depends on the type of screening they choose. There are a variety of options, including yearly stool-based tests or colonoscopies that can be done every 10 years as long as no problems were found. There's also a newer blood test for adults 45 or older. What's causing the colorectal cancer rise in younger adults? No one knows what's causing the rise in cases in younger adults, but Georgetown's Marshall said many young patients lack common risk factors. He wonders if changes in young people's gut bacteria, the microbiome, might play a role. Also, where cancer occurs along the question mark-shaped colon, it starts from one side of the abdomen and swoops to the other before ending in the rectum, influences how aggressive it is and how it's treated. Marshall said there's a marked difference in where younger and older people's tumors tend to strike, another clue being explored. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Voter trust in U.S. elections drops. Los Angeles. President Trump and his allies are questioning ballot security. Democrats are warning of unconstitutional federal intervention. Experts and others are raising concerns about partisan redistricting and federal immigration agents intimidating people at the polls. Voter trust in the upcoming midterm elections, meanwhile, has dropped off sharply. And across party lines, according to new research by the UC San Diego Center for Transparent and Trusted Elections. Out of 11,406 eligible voters surveyed between mid-December and mid-January, just 60% said they were confident that midterm votes will be counted fairly, down from 77% who held such confidence in voting counting shortly after the 2024 presidential election. Shifts in voter confidence are common after elections, with voters in winning parties generally expressing more confidence and voters in losing parties expressing less, said Thad Kauser, one of the center's co-directors. However, the new survey found double-digit across-the-board declines in confidence in the last year, he said. According to voting experts, such drops in confidence and fears about voter intimidation are alarming and raise serious questions about voter turnout in pivotal midterm elections that could radically reshape American politics. While 82% of Republicans expressed at least some confidence in vote counting after Trump's 2024 win, just 65% said they felt that way in the latest survey. Among Democrats, confidence dropped from 77% to 64%, and among independents from 73 to 57, the survey found. Everyone, Democrats, Republicans, independents, and the like, have become less trusting of elections over the past year, Kauser said, calling it a parallel movement in this polarized era. Of course, what is causing those declines differs greatly by party, said Kauser's co-director Lauren Prather, with distrust of mail ballots and non-citizens voting cited by half of Republicans, and concerns about eligible voters being unable to cast ballots because of fear or intimidation cited by nearly a quarter of Democrats. Trump and other Republicans have repeatedly alleged that mail ballots contribute to widespread fraud and that non-citizen voting is a major problem in U.S. elections, despite neither claim being supported by evidence. Many Democratic leaders and voting experts have raised concerns about disenfranchisement and intimidation of eligible voters, in part based on Republican efforts to enforce stricter voter ID and proof of citizenship requirements, and Trump suggesting his party should take over elections nationwide. Others in Trump's orbit have suggested immigration and customs enforcement agencies will be deployed to polling stations, and the FBI recently raided and seized ballots from Fulton County, Georgia, long a target of Trump's baseless claims of 2020 election fraud. Prather said the research has long showed that elite cues or messaging from political leaders matter in shaping public perception of election security and integrity. So it is no surprise that concerns being raised by Trump and other party elites are being echoed by voters. But the survey also identified more bipartisan concerns, she said. Voters of all backgrounds, including 51% of Democrats, 48% of independents, and 34% of Republicans, said they do not trust that congressional districts are drawn to fairly reflect voters' desires. They primarily blamed the opposing party for the problem, but nearly a quarter of both Democrats and Republicans also expressed dissatisfaction with their own party leaders, the survey found. Various states have engaged in unprecedented mid-decade redistricting to win more congressional seats for their party, with Republicans seizing advantage in states such as Texas and Democrats seizing it in states such as California. Voters of all backgrounds, including 44% of Democrats, 34% of independents, and 30% of Republicans, also said they believe it is likely that ICE agents will be present at voting locations in their area, though they did not agree on the implications. Half of Democrats said such a presence would make them feel less confident that votes in their area would be counted accurately, compared with fewer than 14% who said it would make them more confident. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, February 18, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beenan. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. listeners who are blind, have low vision,